The grandmaster makes the winning move in 3 seconds. The violinist performs a technically impossible passage without visible strain. The executive restructures a failing division in a single meeting. To the observer, these moments appear effortless, natural, the product of innate talent that the rest of us simply don't possess. This appearance is a cognitive illusion, and believing it costs you years of potential performance gains. What you're witnessing isn't the absence of effort. You're witnessing the invisibility of architecture. The effort has been front-loaded, systematized, and converted into cognitive infrastructure that now operates below conscious awareness. What appears natural is actually the most unnatural thing possible: a carefully constructed mental operating system running thousands of micro decisions per second, invisible to both performer and observer. This is the effortless excellence illusion, and understanding why it exists changes everything about how you approach professional performance. The illusion creates a specific cognitive trap for intelligent professionals. You observe someone operating at a level you aspire to. Their execution appears smooth, almost automatic. You don't see hesitation. You don't see the infrastructure. You don't see the years of deliberate pattern building that preceded this moment. Your brain makes a predictable attribution error. They have something I don't have. This attribution costs you in 3 measurable ways. First, it misdirects your development efforts. You focus on finding the secret, or the talent, rather than building the systematic cognitive architecture that produces consistent output. You chase hacks, shortcuts, and motivational frameworks instead of constructing the mental models that make performance inevitable. Second, it creates false performance expectations. When your own execution requires visible effort, when you experience cognitive load, decision fatigue, and the friction of learning, you interpret this as evidence of inadequacy. You don't recognize it as the normal, necessary phase of architecture construction. Third, it prevents you from investing in the only thing that actually produces excellence: systematic repetition under conditions designed to build cognitive automaticity. The neuroscience is unambiguous. Skill becomes effortless when neural pathways consolidate through myelination, the process by which frequently used circuits become insulated, allowing signals to travel up to 100 times faster. This process requires approximately 10,000 hours of deliberate practice in complex domains, according to K. Anders Ericsson's research on expert performance. But here's the critical insight most people miss. Those 10,000 hours don't produce talent. They produce architecture. The chess grandmaster isn't seeing the board differently because of innate talent. Their brain has constructed a pattern recognition database of approximately 50,000 to 100,000 chess positions, stored in long-term memory and accessible within milliseconds. The 3-second decision is actually a database query running against decades of indexed experience. The violinist's fingers aren't naturally more coordinated. They've executed the same passage thousands of times, each repetition refining the motor program until the cerebellum can execute it with zero conscious oversight. The cognitive load has been fully offloaded to unconscious processing. The executive doesn't have better instincts. They've accumulated a mental model library of organizational dynamics, power structures, and human behavioral patterns that allows them to compress complex situational assessments into rapid, accurate judgments. None of this is visible. None of this appears as effort. All of it required systematic construction. The psychological mechanism behind the illusion operates through what researchers call the fluency heuristic. When we observe smooth, fluid performance, our brains automatically attribute it to intrinsic capability rather than constructed skill. This heuristic exists because evolutionarily, it was usually correct. Someone who moved efficiently through their environment likely had superior genetic fitness. In modern professional contexts, this heuristic systematically misleads us. Dr. Carol Dweck's research on mindset theory demonstrates that individuals who attribute excellence to fixed traits, talent, intelligence, natural ability, consistently underperform compared to those who attribute it to malleable processes, practice, strategy, system building. The difference isn't motivational, it's architectural. When you believe excellence requires talent you don't possess, you don't invest in building the systems that produce it. You might work hard, but you work reactively, responding to demands rather than constructing proactive cognitive infrastructure. The expert appears to exert less effort because they've pre solved most of the problems you're encountering for the first time. They've built decision trees, mental models, and automated response patterns that eliminate the cognitive load you're currently experiencing. Daniel Kahneman's work on System 1 and System 2 thinking provides the framework. System 1 operates automatically and quickly, with little effort and no voluntary control. System 2 allocates attention to effortful mental activities that demand it. Experts have successfully migrated the majority of their domain-specific processing from System 2 to System 1, not through talent, but through systematic exposure and pattern consolidation. This migration is invisible. When you watch an expert operate, you're seeing System 1 execution. You're not seeing the thousands of hours of System 2 grinding that built the architecture now running automatically. The second psychological component is what researchers call survivorship bias. You only observe the individuals who successfully built the architecture and now operate at high levels. You don't see the thousands of hours of unglamorous construction work. You don't see the failed attempts, the plateau periods, the systematic debugging of cognitive processes. The survivor stands on stage, executing flawlessly. The architecture that allows this execution remains invisible, both literally, neural pathways can't be observed, and practically. The construction phase is complete and no longer visible in current performance. Your brain automatically fills in the gap with the simplest available explanation. They're naturally talented. This explanation protects your ego. If it's talent-based, your current performance isn't your fault, while simultaneously preventing you from taking the actions that would actually improve your performance. The framework for constructing excellence architecture operates on three non-negotiable principles. Principle 1, effort investment precedes effort reduction. You cannot skip the construction phase. The appearance of effortlessness requires a massive upfront investment in systematic skill building that deliberately increases cognitive load before it decreases it. Peak performance researcher Dr. K. Anders Ericsson identified the specific conditions required for this investment to produce architecture rather than just experience. Deliberate practice must occur at the edge of current capability, approximately 4% beyond your comfort zone. Too easy, and you're not building new pathways. Too hard, and you can't maintain the focused attention required for consolidation. It must include immediate feedback loops that allow rapid error correction. The brain builds architecture through error detection and correction, not through mindless repetition. It must be sustained over extended periods, years, not weeks. Myelination is a biological process that occurs at its own pace. You cannot accelerate it through willpower or motivation. For knowledge workers and professionals, this translates directly. If you want to make high-quality decisions effortlessly, you must first make thousands of decisions deliberately, with full conscious attention to the frameworks and models you're applying. If you want to produce excellent written analysis automatically, you must first produce hundreds of analyses slowly, with systematic attention to structure, logic, and clarity. If you want to navigate complex organizational dynamics intuitively, you must first study and deliberately practice reading power structures, incentive systems, and human behavioral patterns until the pattern matching becomes unconscious. Principle 2. Architecture must be domain specific. Generic productivity or success habits don't build the cognitive infrastructure required for excellence in your specific domain. The chess grandmaster's pattern recognition doesn't transfer to poker. The surgeon's motor control precision doesn't transfer to violin performance. The executive's organizational insight doesn't transfer to software architecture. You must build architecture in the exact domain where you need performance. This requires identifying the specific cognitive patterns that produce excellence in your field, then deliberately practicing those patterns until they migrate from System 2 to System 1. For most knowledge workers, this means identify the 20% of cognitive tasks that produce 80% of your professional value. For analysts, this might be data interpretation frameworks. For managers, this might be situational assessment models. For creators, this might be idea generation and refinement protocols. Design micro practices that isolate and train these specific cognitive patterns. A financial analyst might spend 30 minutes daily practicing rapid ratio analysis across different company types. A writer might practice generating 10 alternative framings for a single concept. Track pattern consolidation through measurable proxies: speed, accuracy, reduced cognitive load, decreased decision fatigue. Principle 3. Infrastructure maintenance is non-negotiable. Cognitive architecture degrades without regular use. Neural pathways that aren't activated regularly begin to demyelinate. Pattern recognition databases that aren't accessed regularly become less accessible. Elite performers maintain their effortless excellence through consistent, systematic practice that keeps their infrastructure active. The concert pianist still practices scales daily. The executive still runs structured thinking exercises. The analyst still reviews fundamental frameworks. This maintenance doesn't look like effort because the infrastructure is already built. But without it, performance degrades measurably within weeks. Implementation framework: the architecture construction protocol. Phase 1. Architecture design, weeks 1 to 4. Map your professional domain's cognitive requirements. What specific thinking patterns separate expert from competent performance in your field? Identify observable experts. Study not their outputs, but their processes. How do they approach problems? What frameworks do they reference? What decision sequences do they follow? Design micro-training protocols for each identified pattern. These should be 15 to 30-minute focused practice sessions targeting one specific cognitive skill. Phase 2. Systematic construction, months 2 to 12. Execute your micro-training protocols daily. Consistency matters more than duration. Better to practice 20 minutes every day than 3 hours once per week. Implement feedback mechanisms. Record your practice sessions. Measure your speed and accuracy. Track your subjective sense of cognitive load. Expect zero visible improvement for 8 to 12 weeks. Architecture construction is front-loaded. The performance gains appear suddenly once sufficient myelination occurs. Phase 3. Integration and maintenance. Ongoing. Once specific patterns become automatic, integrate them into real work contexts. Stop isolating practice and start using the architecture in production environments. Schedule weekly maintenance sessions reviewing core frameworks and patterns. This prevents degradation and identifies areas requiring reconstruction. Continuously expand your architecture. As you master one cognitive pattern, identify the next performance bottleneck and begin constructing infrastructure to address it. Excellence appears effortless only after effort becomes infrastructure. The grandmaster, the virtuoso, the executive, none of them possess something you lack. They've simply completed a construction process you haven't yet committed to. This should be liberating, not discouraging. If peak performance required innate talent, your ceiling would be fixed. But if it requires systematic architecture construction, your ceiling is determined entirely by the quality and duration of your investment in building cognitive infrastructure. The professionals you admire aren't operating on a different plane of existence. They're running better software they built themselves through years of deliberate pattern consolidation that is now invisible to everyone, including themselves. Your task isn't to find the talent you're missing. Your task is to design and construct the cognitive architecture that makes your own excellence inevitable. The effort you're currently experiencing isn't evidence of inadequacy, it's evidence that you're in the construction phase. The fact that expertise feels effortful to build is precisely what makes it valuable once built. Most people never build the architecture because they're waiting to discover the talent. The ones who build the architecture discover something better than talent. They discover that systematic construction produces results that talent alone never could. The choice is binary. Continue attributing excellence to invisible qualities you don't possess, or begin the systematic construction of cognitive infrastructure that will make your own performance appear effortless to the next generation of observers. The architecture is waiting to be built. The only question is whether you'll invest in building it or spend another decade believing that excellence requires something you don't have access to. If you recognize that your professional performance would improve with better cognitive infrastructure, this channel operates as your strategic research facility. We don't offer motivation. We architect thinking systems for professionals who understand that excellence is engineered, not discovered. The algorithm serves this to those ready for systematic construction. Your presence here isn't accidental, it's architectural selection. The question that determines your trajectory. What specific cognitive pattern, if you practiced it systematically for the next 90 days until it became automatic, would most significantly elevate your professional output and decision quality? The professionals who can answer this question with precision are the ones building infrastructure while everyone else searches for talent.